Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Synergistic CX podcast here on the CX channel, where CX professionals converge. I'm Erik Brooks, Vice President at Research Metrics and part of the core team here at the CX channel. Joining me today are Emil Tsankov and Cris Oliveira, fellow members of the CX channel team. And I'm pleased to announce that with us today, we have an expert in customer experience, Daniel Cosgrove, the CEO of Mercantile Systems. He's joining us today from San Francisco in the US of A. Dan, it's great to have you here. Could you start?
Thank you, Erik.
Yeah.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Always great to have someone else from the US with us. Could you start by sharing a bit about yourself and your work at Mercantile?
Yeah. It's funny. Some of the younger people working for me laugh because they say I've got 40 years of experience. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. What am I, 80? But I guess I truly do, start in this industry because my father and his partner started the business back in 1954. So as a kid, I was fortunate enough to grow up watching them do surveys, traveling to hotels, literally living in hotels at times, doing mystery shops. As a kid, we used to do some burger places, and my mom would have me go in and order a burger and fries and see if they suggested a large Coke. I mean, that's back in the 70s. They were suggested selling large because they knew back then it's easier to say yes than to have to make a decision. And so I learned that early on. Fast forward, got involved in this a little bit after college, took the business over, started a business, merged with my father's business, and then took it over. And then fast forward, at that time we were regional to Northern California. So fast forward today, we're worldwide. The bulk of our business is North America, but we certainly have clients that are international. And we conduct both mystery shopping from a customer research standpoint, loss prevention standpoint, voice of customer, and most notably AI. We're 110% into AI. We're in its backyard, being in San Francisco. And that's been a big piece of what we're moving towards.
Very cool. Can't wait to hear a lot more about those topics as we move into the rest of our podcast here. Well, we'll move into the agenda for today. So today, our industry study is going to focus on the fast food industry. And the title of our study here is The Customer's Choice, Driving Innovation in Fast Food Excellence. Let's talk about our agenda. Today, we'll be looking at this study where we use our ABSA methodology. That's our aspect-based sentiment analysis to decode customer feedback. On our prior episodes over the past year, we've analyzed many thousands of online reviews across a lot of different industries, from pubs and bakeries to fragrance stores. We've done a study on car rental businesses and also luxury retail shops. And in this episode, we're diving into the fast food industry. This is a highly competitive and fast-paced and constantly evolving industry. And the concept sounds simple. It's just affordable food served quickly. But this has become an extremely complex customer experience ecosystem. And today's fast food brands are challenged not only with the need to deliver speed and value, but also to meet growing expectations around convenience, personalization. There's digital touch points involved at a very high level. There are a lot of different health and allergy options that consumers have to make known to the business and that the businesses have to cater to as well. And also intangibles such as ethical sourcing. So customers now interact with brands across many different channels. They use mobile apps. They have drive-thrus in a lot of these locations. There are delivery services such as Uber Eats and DoorDash. There's in-store pickup, of course, and there's a lot of different loyalty programs across these different types of businesses too. And while price remains important across all of these channels, the overall experience seems to be what drives long-term preference and loyalty. In this episode, we'll explore the findings of our global study, and we'll break down the key loyalty drivers, we'll highlight service gaps, and showcase how fast food brands can foster innovation to stand out in a crowded market. Later in the episode, we will interview Dan. Again, he's the CEO of Mercantile Systems, and he will share with us how this data and how AI in particular, and also mystery shopping as a methodology, are helping these fast food brands unlock their performance and empower their frontline teams so that they can have a great, consistent customer experience that scales. As always, you can explore this entire industry study of the fast food sector by downloading this month's Synergistic CX magazine, which you can always get for free at our website, which is cx-channel.com. And you can, of course, watch this podcast on YouTube or whatever social media you would prefer. So for our agenda today, after we've just covered our introduction, we're going to talk about the sample in our study. We'll talk about the star ratings, the critical review response time. That concept is very important in any industry. We'll talk about the marketing mix and see how these review results map to it. We'll then step into the customer journey, the steps, activities, and touch points, and we'll hit our famous moment of truth where we actually get to see what the results are mapped against the customer journey. This is always the most interesting, one of the most interesting parts of this podcast. We'll then discuss the marketing mix funnel matrix and how that is showing us the main areas that need to be focused on as far as improving the customer service industry. And we will then step into creating a starter voice of the customer survey. Afterwards, we'll have a nice long discussion with Dan, and we will come to our conclusions and next steps where we wrap things up. Okay, some objectives of our study here. We're looking to see how digital trends are harnessed and how they can be better harnessed to improve the customer experience in this particular industry. We'll also discuss how the engagement strategies of these brands can be refined to build more trust and have better opportunities with customers. We will look at the marketing mix in detail with respect to how it could possibly be streamlined for the industry in order to improve the customer experience based on the results of these reviews that we're looking at, and also improve the customer journey. And all of this ultimately is there to unlock new growth opportunities. This is a very competitive market, and anything that can be done to improve the customer experience is going to help to cause growth amongst the various brands as well. So Emil, can you describe our sample to us and tell us a little bit more about how we obtained these results?
Yes, so let's dive into the data. Our sample's worldwide geographic structure is separated into three primary zones: Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, Asia Pacific, and the Americas. Each zone is further broken down into specific regions as visualized in the smaller pie charts. And as we can see, the decomposition of the chart indicates a relatively equal distribution of fast food stores in our sample on high level. With regards to the sample parameters, we are looking at 9,370 fast food establishments that we have collected data for, with almost 72,000 reviews collected for those. So therefore, we are looking at a confidence level of 99.5% and a margin of error of 2.5%. Moving on to the star ratings. Star ratings in the online reviews and ratings are a system that allows customers to evaluate product, service, or business on a scale from 1 to 5. Right. So we see some notable regional differences indicated, variations in customer experience across different geographic areas. The Americas region scores lower on the 5-star scale, and the highest on the 1-star scale, as we can see on the charts here. And what is even more interesting about this specific industry is that the proportion between the 1-star and the 5-star is different compared to all the industry studies that we have done so far. So normally in the past, what we have seen is a regularly consistent proportion of 1 to 4 between the 1-star ratings and the 5-star ratings. And now here in the fast food micro industry, we see a relative smaller divergence with regards to that two extremes, which we more likely will see in the next slides. This would most likely will show with more negative reviews and lower performance overall. As we can also see, the Europe, Middle East, and Asia region stands out with the highest percentage on the 5-star rating and the lowest 1-star rating, indicating stronger overall customer satisfaction. And this is also visible on the average rating chart, where the average overall is 3.6, higher than the 3.39 average.
So, Dan, based on your experience looking here at that average rating chart, we can see that the Americas are below the global average and generally lower overall. With your experience in the U.S. and the Americas market, and considering that a large proportion of the fast food outlets there belong to large corporations, what's your view about the results here being lower than average?
Yeah, it really didn't surprise me. I mean, a couple things. Let's talk about what's going on here. One, in America, every corner has one, two, or three of these locations. When you're driving down the freeway, I'll say, well, I think I'll stop here and grab a burger. Nah, I'll wait till the next exit. I'll wait till the next exit. And literally up and down I-5 in California, you can do that for 400 or 500 miles. So it's mass numbers. But let's talk about the experience. So just the other day, I was in one of these, large chained Mexican restaurants, one of my favorites. And the experience is this: I'm charging my car at the I get a Tesla at the Tesla charging thing, and there's the restaurant. So I bounce over there, and I'm inside. I'm dining, or I'm going to dine. The experience is, my first decision is: do I do a kiosk? Do I talk to somebody at the counter? So there's this big display right there taking up for DoorDash, Uber Eats, and all the drivers, and we're fighting them. They're actually coming around, jostling around. They're hanging out for extra ones. So the customer experience in America is really a challenge. And so we talk about customer experience too. We're not only talking about that, but we're talking about the food and things like that. I mean, they've got the food down. The other thing, the reality is, that you got to understand, is the bosses in these companies, right? The bosses in the companies are the shareholders, right? That's these publicly traded companies. They're playing to the shareholders. And so the CEO, in order to keep his job, needs to drive stock price. And stock price is going to be driven not necessarily by same store sales, because you can move that needle, but it's going to be driven by increasing locations and numbers to drive top line, which brings it to the bottom. And Erik, I do want to say something. You mentioned the challenge in this industry. That's one of the things that intrigues me about this industry the most. It's what people think is the simplest when you drive by. They're just making burgers, they're making tacos, they're making this and that. It's so complex, and today, massively complex. When you go into one of these burger places, you see all these different items that they've got to figure out how to sell, how to push, how to work in the store, how to make an experience. It's absolutely insane, and it's not for the thinnest skin. Like this industry, if you're going into it, you need to realize you need to be thick-skinned, because you've got a lot of headwind coming at you. And so it didn't surprise me in the Americas. When I travel internationally, it's a total different story, the way it's done. So again, going back to that, the numbers didn't surprise me at all.
Interesting. So let's dive into the next indicator and see how the performance is here. The critical review response time. This KPI measures how quickly a business responds to critical reviews, those with a rating of 1 or 2 stars. And obviously, as such, this KPI is a key measurement in customer relationship management, as it directly addresses and reflects the dedication of the business to customer complaints and feedback in general. So here what we're doing is we take the response time and divide it into 4 bands. Excellent responses within 24 hours, fair responses within 72 hours, critical, and any reviews that have been responded in more than 72 hours and not responded at all. And again, this is for the critical reviews, those of 1 or 2 stars. And what we can see here is that on a global scope, only 14% of the reviews get responded within 24 hours. And we see a little bit of a deviation between the Americas, Europe, Middle East, Asia, and APAC. And the deviation is actually not a little bit, it is more than 10% in favor of EMEA compared to Americas, and an average of about 15% for APAC. So here we see a consistent correlation between the critical review response time KPI with the star rating that we saw earlier. Diving into that KPI in depth, here we differentiate between 2 broader groups of reviews with comments and rating-only reviews. And as the title suggests, the reviews with comments are the reviews where customers provided written feedback along with the ratings, whereas the rating-only reviews are those where customers only left a star rating. Obviously, customers are more likely, companies and chains are more likely to respond to reviews with written feedback because that offers context and actually something to respond to. But what we can see here when we look at that KPI in depth is that fast food chains are indeed more likely to respond to reviews containing written feedback. However, even with the increased attention to comment-based reviews, the significant regional variations in response patterns still persist worldwide. And actually, what we can see is that the differentiation between the Americas and Europe, Middle East, and Asia is increasing slightly with regards to reviews with comments.
Yeah, a lot of our industries that we've looked at so far have similar results here with respect to it's just being a low performing metric. These brands just don't seem to be really staying on top of their reviews.
Which is interesting because, in the restaurant business is where the reviews started. So it should have been a long tradition to take care of this.
Well, and I'll add to that again. I wasn't really surprised on that. Certainly, we're looking at a macro piece of data here, right? And so we're talking about, in this case, I'll talk about the much larger brands, typically the publicly traded. The smaller brands, privately held, are going to be different. They're going to treat this differently. I'd suspect that if we looked into those, we'd see a dramatic difference in how they're being dealt with. Mm-hmm. But when you talk about publicly traded in these large brands, and first of all, again, speaking about America, but even internationally, when you pull off the freeway to one of these 6 or 7 fast food places that are there, that are every exit, you know what you're going to get. Like, they're really, really good at making their item consistent. Like, they know that. Otherwise, they'd never be around. It doesn't necessarily mean it's fantastic. They don't have to shoot for that, but they've got to be consistent. And that's what they can do, even to the point when it's international. Years ago, when I was younger, I worked for a company called Distron. We were the distribution center for Burger King. And I was in charge of the distribution for AFES, which was the transportation over international. We shipped the burgers from America to Europe. So they were getting the same product here. So it tasted the same. And that's what you get. So frankly, when I pull off the freeway and I'm driving up north to see my daughter, I don't need to go to Yelp or Google to review the 5 or 6 fast food places. We all know what they're going to be. We know what they are. So there's no reason why a review is needed in that aspect. And then we go back to, they know where they're at. Like, are they going to spend effort replying back to the reviews that are negative and all? Well, probably not. Like, that's not where they necessarily need to be. And we talk about when Erik says, it's a very challenging industry. The margins are super thin in this industry. Like, they're playing with pennies and nickels, almost to the point where grocery stores are fractions of cents. They're probably second to that with pennies and nickels. So when you talk to them about using services, the first thing you got to think is, we don't have the revenue to do that. Or can we do both? That usually isn't the luxury that they have. So they have to take from somewhere, and they know in these areas that we're going to be okay, that we don't necessarily maybe even need to do that. People know what we're all about and where we're at.
Yeah, that would explain why we see this 8.5% response rate. It's very rare to see something below 10%. I think this is the second time that we see CRRT below 10%, actually.
And I'll add too, today, if you see, people aren't going like Yelp, Google, this, that, right? It's YouTube. People are looking at reviews from people telling them this. So like when we're going to a restaurant, say in Napa or something, my wife jumps on and she's YouTubing it, the restaurants in Napa, and people are speaking to exactly what's going on. They're talking to you. I don't have to read it anymore. And this is big where AI is going to come in. We're going to talk later. It's shifting what's going on, and it's just not the same profile or demographic or style of data information collecting that people need to pay as much attention to as they did.
Yeah, you can have one YouTube short that goes viral that does more damage than 1,000 bad reviews. Yeah.
And let's face it, if I read a bunch of reviews, I've got to read the 5 stars, the 1 stars, the 2 stars. It gets exhausting. Like if I'm really going to try and do that. So if I can watch someone that I can look at and go, wow, they're kind of like me. They seem to speak like me. They seem to like the same foods as me, and they're showing me the food and telling me about it. It weighs a lot. And I only maybe need to see 1 or 2 of those, and I'm good to go. I really get an idea. So that's really where we're seeing, the drive for the feedback coming.
All right, so let's change gears now and dive into the marketing mix of the fast food stores. So here, what we're going to do is try to investigate the complexity of the different customer paths across multiple channels. And let's start with the marketing mix elements, or what do customers talk or care about. This chart indicates the distribution of the elements of the marketing mix. We use the marketing mix, which is an extended version of the traditional 4P concept. It includes the following 7 elements: product, price, place, promotion, people, process, and physical evidence. And this is a model which provides a more comprehensive framework for businesses to evaluate and improve their marketing strategy, especially in the service industry. What we can see here on the chart is that customer reviews indicate that over 80% of the feedback centers on product, people, and place, highlighting their vital role in shaping the overall customer experience in the sector. Now, when we dive deeper into the marketing mix elements and features, and this is in essence what details do customers prioritize. We see a more detailed picture. What we see here is with regards to product, which is number 1 in the proportion. Customers prioritize the food quality and the menu selection. Food quality with almost 25%, or almost a quarter of all customer aspects discussed, and menu selection slightly below 10%. Then we see this from people, the staff service attitude with more than 20%. That is actually the highest proportion with regards to which details do customers prioritize. And then in place and process, we have atmosphere and design, that is the ambience, and the customer service system with 5.5%, it's slightly above 7%. So these 5 features take the bigger majority of the details that customers prioritize in their feedback.
It's interesting to see that as an industry largely associated with low prices, we can see here that price is actually one of the topics that customers seem to care a bit less about in their reviews. Dan, what's your view on that? Can we say that in the fast food industry that CX, the customer experience, is much more complicated than just having a low price and quick service?
Yeah. And let me go a little bit, I call it deeper, maybe a little bit from a different angle. And I'm going to say it this way, and then I'll back into why I'm saying it. Customers don't know what they want, right? They really don't. And I'll prove it. If they did, we wouldn't have an iPhone. Because if you remember, Steve Jobs, the first thing he built was an iPod. And he built it and designed it because, well, back then we had a Walkman. And he even admitted the Walkman quality wasn't bad. If you remember Walkmans and CDs, and all, the quality of sound was really pretty good. And if he would have listened to the customers, they would have said the sound's good. He would never have built it. And so we wouldn't have it. And so he knew that customers don't know what they always want. They think they do. And that's also proven in the restaurant industry. When we go back to healthy items on the menu, right? We wanted healthy items on the menu. We wanted to go into Chili's and I wanted to know I can get a vegan item or a vegetarian item in this, but I'm still going to order the triple dipper, right? But I want to know it's there. And if you ask them back then, like, how much are those items selling? They're not. No one's ordering them, but they got to know it's there. So when I'm going to that restaurant, I need to know they're there to bring me there, but I'm not going to order them. And that's kind of what happens, you know, when the QSR side, again, they know where their food is. They know what they've got to produce and get. And so if I would judged my experience at that fast food Mexican restaurant I told you about, that the experience was less than desirable, but the food is what I wanted. So what do I do next? I don't go inside. I just drive through and I eat my car while it's being charged. So when we survey and do these types of surveys, they aren't without merit. They aren't without validity. They need to be taken into account and listened to. But again, I go back to the customer's not sure what they always want and what they need and where it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they sure score in the service with a lot of red here. So let's take a look at the marketing mix experiences, and this will help us understand what the customer thoughts and feelings and overall sentiment is. The scores for the fast food marketing mix reveals notable challenges. In fact, this is the first time where I see in these studies that we have done. I think this is the 9th study that we're doing. The first time we see red being more than 50% of one marketing mix element, and here we actually have, I think, almost all of the top 4 marketing mix elements. Actually, top 5 marketing mix elements are predominantly in the red. With what we see here is that over 40% of the reviews highlight negative experiences in the key areas such as product, people, and place, while nearly 80% of the feedback criticizes the process element. These insights point to significant opportunities for improvement and enhancing the customer satisfaction. So a lot of red on this sunburst chart. And again, I just want to highlight that this is the first time that we see that much red. Usually it is 20, 25%, 30% at the extreme, but right now we see something which is setting the record with regards to negative marketing mix experiences.
Yeah, this reminds me a little bit of the first study we had about pubs, and when we spoke about, the rising costs of living and inflation and everything. In a way, customers, they demand a better experience also because it costs them more money now. And when you have a tight budget, of course, if you are willing to go out and spend on a meal, even if it's a fast food restaurant, your expectations are higher if your earning powers is less at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is very interesting to see this large swath of negative reviews across each of these particular parts of the marketing mix. Dan, so with so many different implications here for the entire customer journey, if you've got a company, let's say, who's never really focused on the customer experience formally before, so someone who's coming in like maybe as a new client or something like that for Mercantile Systems, like I've owned a couple of restaurants, and let's say my chain grows and I've got 10 locations now, and I want to actually focus on customer experience because I can't be at every store all the time. Where would you recommend someone who's in that situation start? Where should someone who's stepping into measuring customer experience as a formal metric, where should they start here to make sure they don't end up in this type of a situation?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I'd say, first of all, is that you have to get the executive team to really be bought in, not just on the website that we provide good service, like really, really be bought in. So 20 something years ago, when we picked up one of our first international clients, it was in the golf management industry. They were known for 2 things, the world's largest golf management company and bad service. Like, they were known for that. And so they finally decided, let's get good. They had 2 new co-CEOs. Let's get good service. Let's really get to where we want to go. And so they committed to that effort. They put teams in place. They hired Ken Blanchard's company out of Arizona to put in the mix for customer service and processes like that. They then hired a team to be able to measure that, reward that, share the data. They hired us to do all the measurement. So they were committed. And on this one particular service where we started with them, which was calling the locations, when we first did a test study with them, they were averaging 40, 50% compliant on the new service standards. And in 90 days, they bumped that to 90%. And they stayed there for 20 years, the whole time we were measuring that. So it really comes down to commitment. Like, we can't just lip service. It's not going to work. It's got to be really put into place. And then we're talking about hiring, training, measuring, rewarding, or retraining. Like, it's this simple system. Like, they all know how to do it. All all this data here that shows the challenged areas. And if we extracted that data and said, here's the markets or the companies that are doing it, they really know what to do. It's not a mystery. We go back to economics, we go back to thin margins, we go back to where they need to be. They're experts at where they need to be. And if you look at their numbers over the years, you take these chains and you look at the percentage of sales based on a restaurant 20 years ago today, it's obviously higher through inflation, growth, extra things they're selling, but not marginally based on 20 years worth of growth. Their profit margins have increased greatly because of efficiencies and things like that. So when we're working with a new client, we first determine, are you committed to doing this or not? And if you are, then do they have the things in place? And then where do we start? And we don't hit them fire hose them, right? You've got to start small and drip the information so they can digest the information, get it to the team members, measure the change, and keep it going that way. So that's typically how these start and then how they're successful. The other thing I'll say is are you measuring everything? Like oftentimes they'll measure one piece, like just the drive-through or walk-in or this or that. You got to have the palette and resources to measure all those customer touch points. And in today, with the providers of delivery that aren't even your own, the challenge you have, and that is reflective against you, whoever's delivering that food, it creates whole other nuances that are going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that part gets complicated pretty quickly these days.
It really does. You take, for example, something like one of our chains we're working for. So the item's getting delivered late. So they're like, we got to figure out why. Is the store producing it slow once the ticket's generated, or is it the pickup? And so we said, well, why don't we dive into your CRM, the delivery, and see where that's happening, because it's all being tracked. They didn't think about that. So then we go in, we can see when it's delivered, when it's put up on the thing, when it's picked up, when it's delivered, and why. And the challenge in that market is you're dealing with third-party deliveries, and those team members that are working there are trying to maximize their dollar. So they're either going to other locations, they're waiting for more orders because, they know if we get more, we make more money. So it really creates some massive challenges with guest experience. And again, at the end, the guest who's getting the item delivered is only thinking, I ordered from this company. They're good, they're not good. And it's not always the ability of the companies to determine that experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely gets complicated when you have these third-party delivery services, because like you just mentioned, the customer experience, a big part of it is the food might be cold because it got delivered an hour past when someone might have thought, because there were 2 other stops along the way.
Yeah, and you take that into a nuance like being in the middle of Manhattan versus out in Iowa. That's a whole different ballgame right there. I mean, you might as well call those different businesses and models, because a mile or 2 in Manhattan is going to take you as long as 20 miles in, Iowa.
Right.
All right, so let's do a very quick wrap up on the marketing mix topic. Key takeaways. Promptly respond to negative reviews. Obviously, with over 80% of the negative reviews left unanswered, there's a clear need for a more proactive approach. Leverage core marketing mix elements, product, people, and place. As we could see, a lot of negative sentiment signaled back to the brands, a lot of opportunities for improvement. Staff attitude take center stage with a little bit over a quarter of the reviews. Food quality and variety matters. Again, almost a quarter of all the aspects being shared back through the reviews. And process emerges as a major pain point, as we saw. Nearly 80% of all critical feedback targets the process element, signaling a strong need to streamline operations to improve overall satisfaction. So those are the key takeaways for the first part of this podcast.
This is the end of part 1 of our 3-part episode here on the Synergistic CX podcast. In the next segment, we will explore more details of our study about fast food restaurants and learn more about the customer journey map and key touch points that drive loyalty in this industry. Remember that you can find the details of this study for free on our website, cx-channel.com. And you can also follow the CX channel on LinkedIn, YouTube, or your favorite social media. And be sure to press that subscribe button so you don't miss our next episode.